This is Emily, president of Self Advocates of ADEC and podcast host. Welcome to another episode of our monthly podcast, Expert Tips by ADEC Self Advocates. Hello everyone, this is Expert Tips by ADEC Self Advocates. This podcast is going to be very summer inspired due to the summer solstice being on June 20th. Today we got Chris Kingsley. Thank you for coming.
You bet. Good to be here.
Yeah. And today we are going to be talking about inclusive communities, creating accessible spaces and places. So not only is your role in this organization the CEO, but what other role in community organizations do you play advocating and implementing more accessible public areas?
Yeah, well, we, first off, I think any community organization, one of their roles is to, represent particular interests or particular groups within a community. And so I think part of a healthy community is that you have community organizations who are working on projects that are accessible to the people that they serve and that the people that they're working with on a regular basis. We're fortunate at ADEC because a lot of people know us and they know the type of work that we do, and so we'll get calls from. We've worked with Elkhart City, we've worked with Goshen on kind of helping them work on accessible public amenities and things like that. So I think that's an example of, and it's important, what I love about this podcast is it's all about promoting self-advocacy, because that's such an important voice in these types of conversations. But really any one of us who can be a voice for, accessible design consideration when we're talking about facilities, playgrounds, public amenities, it just helps us accomplish a more inclusive community,
Which is very, very important for our community to be very inclusive. Yeah, it's definitely a really important conversation, and I'm glad we're having that conversation. Yeah. Especially within not just this podcast, but the ADEC Self Advocates as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you don't mind but this might sound a little odd, but with you being the CEO, I like to pick your brain a little bit about what kind of ideas you have for creating a more accessible place for us, for people with disabilities.
Yeah, well, I think it starts with it starts right at the beginning of any idea or project. That's when you want people to be thinking about accessibility, because it needs to be built in from the outset. And the reason, so I previously, prior to being at ADEC, I was at La Casa, and we built a lot of housing, and you from the outset you're thinking about, okay, how do we make sure we have enough units that are going to be accessible for disabled populations, and it's the same. I think it's the same with any kind of amenity that we work on. So what you want to happen is you want to have an organization like ADEC be recognized and known in the community, so that when people start to work on something, they reach out and they start to think ahead of time, what can we do to make it accessible. And then the other thing I think is a lot of really well-intentioned people will start with an idea of accessibility, but there might be more to accessibility than what they're thinking about.
Right.
So in other words, what can we do to support somebody who's hearing impaired or visually impaired, or we often think just about the mobility side of accessibility.
But what
When
about
we're
the mental?
yeah, exactly. So all of those are factors. You're right. So how do we design things that are tailored to those different abilities? So I think that's I think it's for me it's about the early conversations around any kind of project that are trying to take into consideration, we're part of a community. If we're going to build a community amenity, we want that to be something that the whole community has access to.
I hope you don't mind, but I kind of want to talk about the Greenspace a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of construction going on in the back of the Arc. There's a lot of construction in the back of the hub.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah, so the ADEC Resource Center, which is over right across from Chemcrest on Middleton Run Road in Elkhart, great, great site. We feel fortunate to be there. As you mentioned, Emily, the hub, which is our a skills and training program, operates out of that newly renovated facility. Such a wonderful space. We also run an adult day program on the other side there, and some
The
therapies.
plaza, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. What used to be at the plaza in downtown Elkhart. And so in the back, like you mentioned, we're doing an outdoor amenities project, and it's meant to be really a wonderful kind of inclusive, recreational space, kind of health promoting space for programs that we run at ADEC. The one that we think about this time of year is summer camp, because they just started uh, their their program yesterday, as we record this, actually on Monday as we record this. So on June 9th. Um,
Yeah, I met
but
the
but
teacher. I met Sophie.
did you? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they're getting going there. But it's still it's still in process. It's going to be very neat. It's already got the playground. It's got a large rec pad with basketball hoops. It's going to have raised garden beds, that are kind of an opportunity for people to plant, flowers, maybe various garden vegetables. But then also it's intended to be a very aesthetic place where there'll be a fountain in the center that, yeah, well, a water feature, I guess is a better way to call it, in the center of that space, and then a lot of walking slash bike path, area around that. There's a pavilion back there, so it's going to be a great outdoor space for ADEC, when it's completed.
That sounds great. So the green space, is it going to be open to all individuals or just the summer camp program?
Yeah, so it's a space for all of ADEC. It'll definitely be used by more than just the summer camp program. The summer camp will typically be, when they're in action, they'll be in the kind of the rec pad, playground side of things. Um, but it will be for all of ADEC programming, and I think it'll be used probably a lot by different different groups, within ADEC programming.
Now, this is going to be a bit of a hard question.
All right.
Do you know exactly the estimation of when the construction will be done?
Well, yeah, it. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna be kind of, conservative with my answer. I think by the end of July that almost everything, if not everything, will be completed there.
All right.
Now, the one thing that will still be in progress is, all of the grass that has been seeded will will still be growing. So it won't look kind of what it will look like eventually quite by then. But I think by and large all of the contractors and kind of the work on the project will be wrapped up by then.
All right. Mm, okay, but maybe besides individuals with individuals like us from for ADEC, will it be open to? I mean, open to the public, not necessarily just ADEC.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, that it's not. It is. It's really just open to ADEC. At this point, there's no plans to have any kind of sort of open access hours to it. Um, so yeah, it's intended just as a kind of a programming and recreation space for the use of those within ADEC.
All right. How does ADEC know when all of its buildings are ADA accessible?
Well, yeah, ADA accessible design is certainly uh, for us part of the design from the outset on anything new that we're doing, and even thinking through beyond just you know what's required in terms of ADA accessibility, but making sure that our facilities are well designed for the type of use that we have in mind and for the people that we will be working with on that. But I will say there's a lot of progress, not only at an agency like ours, but even in building codes in general. A lot of that ADA accessibility is mandated as part of the design, depending on the type of space that you're doing. So for us, we're certainly very proactive about making sure that we have that. But I think even as a society, there's we're fortunate. I've traveled a lot to Ecuador through church involvements over the years, and
Ooh.
boy, when I'm there, I often think about there's just not much accessible design whatsoever in the places that I'm at, and you really gain an appreciation for the focus that we place on that in a culture like ours here. So, but that's a bit of how we think about it. Is just certainly from the outset of designing, we think about making sure that we have the ADA accessibility.
How do you think we could educate ourselves on public accessibility?
Well, I think the one of the real key factors is that people in positions to, you know, get projects approved or to design projects are thinking about that. So it's kind of we want the general public aware of the importance of accessibility, and we really want people who have, again, that power to kind of create those types of projects to be thinking about that. And I think we live in a community with a fair amount of awareness around that issue, which is a really really positive thing. So I think it's, for ADEC, for example, and for me in my role, it's making sure that when we get a call or when we get an email from somebody who's saying we're looking at doing whatever the case may be, that we're responding to that and a part of that type of conversation. Um, but then also just making sure that public officials are aware of the needs there, and depending on what is being proposed, particularly if there's something that really is going to fall short on meeting sort of the accessibility of community members, making sure that we're there to speak up on behalf of those types of needs.
Thank you for coming today. This is really fun, Chris.
Likewise, I always enjoy this.
Yeah. Honestly, I do too. I really like the podcast a lot. It's really fun. Well, welcome back to another Expert Tips by ADEC Self Advocates. And we'll see you in another one. Thanks for tuning in and hearing from your neighbors with disabilities. Check out next month's podcast for a new guest and topic. I am Emily, host of Expert Tips by ADEC Self Advocates. See you next month.